Today we are focusing on reflecting from our learning. Um, it's been a long 8 weeks. There's things that we have tried. There's things that we have found that have worked. And there's things that just definitely didn't work. So taking this opportunity today to kind of look back and reflect on all that we've learned. But then, how do we continue to move forward? What are next steps? It may feel kind of early to be thinking about that, but I know probably a lot of your teachers have been asking you. I was really thinking about before all of this happened, the Thursday before all of this happened, March 12th. And I was sitting with a whole bunch of educators in a media center, which is usually where I facilitate professional development, right? Like many of you. And it was obvious that we were pretty distracted because we were talking about this thing called a coronavirus, and it had been kind of in the news a little bit. And there's lots of conversation about, would this possibly even make it to North Carolina? Is this something we would be worried about? And I could tell, like, throughout the whole entire day, people were a combination of confused, and my first year teachers are getting really anxious. So it was a really interesting kind of room to read. And as they were talking about the possibility of school being closed, it was very, very clear and obvious that they were like, absolutely not, it will never happen. Did you guys experience this too? There's no way that they would close the school doors. And ultimately, right, there's no way that maybe a week, beyond spring break, that school might close. So this was the Thursday before that weekend when we all find out we wouldn't be coming back. Little did we know we had like 2 more days in the classroom, and then that was it. So just thinking about how sure we all were that it would never come to schools closing. I actually took the lunch break and wrote a really quick crash course on the in the inevitable, maybe possible chance that school might be closed for like a whole week. What could we do for our remote learning situations? Little did we know where we would be now. So with thinking about that and how far we've come in this time, it's been 8 weeks, but how many of you feel like it's been this many weeks, right? Um, it has been quite a trying time, and this has been emergency remote learning. This isn't, it's very different from teaching an online class, right? So we didn't have any time to prepare. Our teachers just jumped right in, and we got to hand it to them. They did what they needed to do, right, to the best of their ability, and you've jumped in and support through all of this. So what I thought we would start with kind of today and talk a little bit about, I have been doing these webinars for 8 weeks for FI Connects, but I've also been doing multiple webinars for the state and remote learning needs and all of this. So I was curious, if I look back, what were some of the things that educators were saying that they really thought was working for them, things that they thought they needed, and then ultimately things I think that we could take forward with us wherever our next phase takes us. So I thought I would share with you like my top 10, my top 5, not top 10, my top 5 takeaways, but then giving us an opportunity too to, as a group, connect and talk about, what's working for you and in these areas as well. So feel free to jump into the chat if you want to share, if you want to chat, if you want to open up the mic, just let me know. This is an open forum for us to share and collaborate. So to make it a little bit fun, I thought I would make this a little bit of a game. So I have some trivia questions. The points are up to you to keep track of. You can keep your own score. The points mean absolutely nothing, so I hope you win. Okay, so here we go. So worth 100 points. And I'm curious if you can guess the answer to this one. The key in design of our remote learning professional development, our remote learning lessons, feel free if you want to drop your answer into the chat, you can. But is it focusing on content, simple PD design, or alignment to competencies? So as we're thinking about, in our remote learning situation, our emergency remote learning situation, well, these are important. It's really about keeping it simple, right? We want to keep it simple. We want to model simple design for our teachers, right? So you've heard like the KISS method. I like to refer to it as like keep it seriously simple. And another teacher I was talking to, she referred to it as like keep it simple, sweetheart. So that is going to be key. And just looking back at some of the things that were working for teachers, this was shared very early on in FI Connects. It was a great video. It's captured in a great video by Kristen Zimke. She's fantastic. And we were calling those like mini lessons. And she describes these mini lessons and how she chunks them out. And these were her chunks. First, it's on her, the teacher, right? Today, I'm going to be teaching you. I'm going to connect this learning. And then she transitions into more of a show and tell opportunity. So where she's asking her students in her mini videos to like, watch me, and then I'm going to have you try. Then there's an opportunity for students to engage. So she's like, okay, now you try. You're going to do it. She encourages them to pause the video, or she asks them questions and pauses. Remember Dora the Explorer? I have a 2-year-old. I've seen a lot of it, where she will ask the question and then pause. And it's a little awkward, but she's waiting for a response, right? These are all things that we can use in our PD and model for our teachers to use in their lessons. And then lastly, it's linking back to that reason why this is so important. So as you work, remember these things. And that's how she creates these little mini lesson chunks. There's also opportunities to differentiate, personalize within that. And I know I'm going really, really fast here, but I'm going to give you links to all of these. And also, deeper dives into all of this content can be found on past FI Connects video sessions. And then also, let's keeping it even simpler. How can we, in our mini PD or our lessons, keeping it real simple for expectations, support, and then how are they going to demonstrate? So you can see here, engaging, clear expectations, there's the doing, and then there's the sharing. And for some teachers, we're finding that it's really working for them to see it broken into these small chunks that are more manageable for them to design to, but then also more manageable for our students as well. Again, if there's any questions at any time, feel free to jump on in. And then if you've been a regular here at FI Connects, you might remember this. We went a step further in trying to create something simple by developing a mix and match kind of lesson choice board, or you can call it a PD choice board. It can be easily translatable for professional development, but then also inviting students to use it as a choice board. So the idea being number 1, 2, and 3, these are our mini lesson must-haves. There has to be engagement, there has to be some doing of some kind, and then ultimately some kind of sharing and feedback. And regardless of which option you pick, you can pick option A, B, or C, or you can mix and match them. And we added to our chat window a deeper dive into this. And so it gives some examples, but consider, even for your professional development, you could create a choice board for teachers and how they want to engage in something that you're trying to teach them or impart to them. But then this is also a great model that teachers have used and are using. We're getting good feedback on it. And we've even seen teachers use this as a choice board for their kids. And then ultimately, we're thinking of our keeping it simple lesson or PD designs. We want to have those clear instructions. Those are crucial. Opportunities to offer that motivation and really targeting our audience. So for the coach, is it going to be other teachers? For the teachers, is it going to be students? And also their families, depending on the age and who they have at home that may be supporting and helping them. And then where we can weave in materials to extend and enhance. So that was a lot of stuff. That was my number 5 on my list. And I'm curious, if you want to get some additional points, feel free. If you want to pick up the mic or you want to add into the chat, what are some ways that you have found keeping it simple or ways you're providing PD that are working for you in terms of just keeping it simple and seeing some impact?
This is Pamela. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great. What I've found has worked well is that I'm a literacy coach, but I also work with small groups of students, classrooms of students, and the parents have been so responsive to the fact that each lesson has one focus, and they're telling me that their child understands what they're supposed to do, and it's a very limited period. So I have a half an hour to do the I do, we do, you do, and then the link. So I've really tried to keep it one lesson per class and building on those lessons. And I have good attendance. The students are positive. And what's been really so fun is how positive the parents have been about the fact that they feel like their child's getting something out of something that's so focused. And I was thinking that as I continue to work virtually like this, I'm going to continue to try to hone this, also to help teachers do it. But it's been very interesting from my point of view because it was the time crunch that created it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you probably saw this too when the first week or a couple of weeks of content being rolled out, and then just the whiplash of parents and students and pictures of these, packets that gone home and said they complete this, by the end of the week. And I mean, folks were overwhelmed. So thanks for sharing that, and then that hyper focus or just focusing in on whatever it is, if it's a student or if it's a teacher or whoever it is. Yeah, we did kind of experience some whiplash, didn't we, Tierney? And it was so, again, but we were learning, and it wasn't like we had any time to plan for this. So anybody else want to share things that are working for them in regards to, keeping it simple or their how they're organizing either professional development or lessons?
Hey, Jackie.
Hi.
It's Christine.
Hello.
Hear me? I'd like to add on to that, keeping it simple, also keeping it consistent. Just talking to some of my teachers that I support, this first, when you describe it as whiplash, and it was right, like everybody was getting all these different, oh, I got interactive slides, oh, we've got this tic-tac-toe board, oh, we've got this. And so doing a bunch of different things, and a lot of my teachers have said after about that second week when I had Zoom meetings at the exact same time every week, and I sent out this template. It was the same consistent template. Parents were more receptive, students were more engaged. Every Tuesday at this time they could meet with me. And I even started to see that a little bit in my coaching role. The first few weeks, it was like nobody was meeting with me. I felt kind of defeated in my coaching role. And then after being on here, I started doing those coffee with coach, and they were consistent every week, the exact same time. And by week 8, I have the majority of my teachers checking in because it's the same time every week and it's consistent, and we talk about the same thing. So there isn't oh no, what are we talking about this week, if that makes sense. So along with the simplicity, it was also the consistency.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah, because they just know what to expect. You don't have to send more emails. You don't have to keep, reminding them, or there's something to that. Consistency and simplicity. I love it. Anybody else want to share before we go on to tip number 4?
I'd like to. This is Amanda Pembroke. Can you hear
Amanda.
me? Hi. I am lucky enough to work with Brian Whitson at China Grove Middle. He is the tech facilitator and I'm the instructional coach, and we actually partner for joint office hours on the coaching side. So we do like just drop-in hours consistently on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then we host joint PD on something that we notice teachers have started to ask for, even if it's something that is seemingly as simple as we're getting new devices and teachers need to know how to back up everything that they may house on their current devices, or if it's something that teachers are struggling with LMS, so that they know, hey, you can come to this optional training on Wednesday, but it's going to be on this topic, or you can drop in and just have a lunch drop-in time with us on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so we found that, again, having that consistency in what we are there to support them with, and then they aren't having to remember what our individual schedules are, because we're both there and they can come ask either one of us a question during those times, has been really nice.
It's great to be able to tag team too.
For sure.
I hope that share in the chat, who is your lifeline? Who is your sidekick, right? We're not alone in this. So it is really important so we've got keeping it simple, consistency, but then also like that collaboration or having that thought partner, that person to kind of support and help out as we go.
Mm-hmm.
So my next tip to share with you, my trivia question, what elements of learning can continue to foster relationships and building empathy, not only with our teachers, but our students? This is a tough one. You're gonna probably have to, think really hard on this one. It's worth 1,000 points. Yeah, you saw it. It's feedback, right? It is all of the above. Feedback is so crucial. And while it's something that we do naturally as coach with our colleagues, our teachers have gotten to this new level of understanding feedback for their students and with their families and keeping that connection going. So, and just thinking about, how we're checking in as a coach and how we're asking teachers to check in with their students, synchronous versus asynchronously, they can be leveraged to some certain advantages, which some of you have already shared some of this in your comments already. So synchronously, it's a great opportunity checking in. How are you? How is it going? If you're working in a small group for learning, or if your students, you have students in like clubs or doing research or writing, it really offers that opportunity for connection and making you available to be responsive to questions being asked. So in this situation here where I'm asking questions, you're sharing, we're in real time. But asynchronously is a great opportunity for you to share short coaching lessons or instruct teachers that they should be creating some opportunities with their lessons asynchronously, where they're giving instructions, maybe they're demonstrating some learning. And then, this is where you can foster read alouds or share writing, peer feedback, those kinds of instructions. It really offers that flexibility for students, but then also teachers in your PD to rewatch or review something for clarity. So the feedback we got on this, it was really helpful for teachers to understand maybe how they could, when they should maybe ask certain questions or how they could package materials. Likewise from coaches, being able to create asynchronous videos, putting them in a consistent and shared spot where students or teachers or families could go and they could understand, like, how do I back up my computer and how do I make that work? Likewise, our teachers really found it impactful to be reminded of how their remote learning interactions would be. And I know as a coach, this is what you've been doing since the very beginning, right? Learner to learner, not teacher to teacher, collaboration, connection. So the coffee with the coach, where other teachers are coming to and they're talking, right? But then also that learner to content. How are the teachers are supporting consuming information? How are the students that teachers are supporting consuming information? That's ultimately the most important piece, right? But then there's also the teacher to you, the coach, or the learner to instructor interaction. And that's where that engagement and that feedback loop is super important. Now, I know for many of you, this is not going to be new. This is not good old Noster's model for complex change. And I have been sharing this a lot prior to our current situation. I've been sharing this one for years, but it's such a helpful tool to help identify roadblocks when those we're supporting are feeling stuck. When we are, this feels like every week was kind of a new challenge or a new change. And then kind of assessing where folks are. Once we identify the missing piece of Noster's model, we can hopefully take some action. And the reason why, if you haven't seen this before, the reason why we like this so much is that you can see the equation at the top, which equals all the elements needed for success. But as soon as I take one of those pieces away, it's going to equal out something different. And many of those are equaling out an emotion that can be recognizable, and action that can be recognizable. So, for example, we had lots of false starts in the beginning because our action plan was being developed on the fly, right? Right. There's obviously lots of frustration because maybe teachers weren't aware of the resources they had available to them. So right now we're experiencing a lot of resistance because a lot of our incentives are gone. That motivational piece for our students, once they announced that grades were kind of going away, I'm sure you probably saw a drop off with some of your connection with students and maybe some of your teachers when MIA. I hope not. But what is the incentive that keeping connection and keeping that momentum going? So this is a really helpful tool and model that I just wanted to bring up again. We're seeing it being shared a lot and implemented a lot. So I'm curious for those of you out there, in order to share, like what's working for you in fostering relationships and maybe connecting to those reluctant teachers or reluctant students, depending on your role. Feel free to you can share in the chat or you can pick up the mic. I know we've had already shared the coffee with the coach, which was just a great idea of making yourself available in a certain time of day, and it's relaxed, it's informal. You can really be able to read a person more, maybe where they're coming from, implement that master model maybe, right? Pamela says she's been setting up meetings with teachers, asking them to develop agendas and schedules for those consistencies. And this applies to how we connect with our teachers, but then how we're connecting with families too. So we know our parents aren't teachers, but they're trying their best. The ones that we've been able to communicate with and support. Would anybody else like to share before we jump into our next tip that seems to be working? Amanda shared in the chat, she sends individual check-ins early in the week, asks about coaching needs, and also checks in on families. So using that beginning of the week time to connect and get people reminded that you're there for them to support so they can connect with you later in the week. I love that. It's a great, and then they can expect that, okay, it's Monday, I'm probably going to get a check-in, right? They can anticipate that. So we know relationships probably more than ever before. It's not that we didn't have them before. We obviously did. That's what school and education and what coaching is all about. But it's really put a spotlight on the strength of relationships, considering that we are physically distanced from one another and what that can mean. So we're seeing a lot of educators really considering not only their relationships with students, but the ways that they're encouraging those relationship builders within their lesson plans as well. And Kathy has shared that she has a small newsletter that cuts down on the emails. Gotta love that, right? So you send them that newsletter, and she's showing teachers what other teachers are doing remotely, and weekly, bi-weekly, you can view how many and how long folks are looking at the newsletter. So you can get some analytics about, okay, are they actually looking at it? Are they using it? That can be really helpful. If you're baking something, if you're doing something, you want it to be as impactful as possible. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Kathy. All right, so worth 5,000 points. We know feedback is so meaningful. Meaningful feedback is crucial to create what important educational necessity? Motivation, mastery, or monitoring. We talked a lot about this in our last session. And if you are thinking A, you are correct. We really are seeing a need for motivation right now, not only for ourselves, but let's face it, it has been 8 weeks, but for our teachers, they're feeling the burnout. It is very real. They're managing personal and professional lives. You're managing personal and professional lives. But then also motivation for our students and our families to just keep it going for a few weeks more. So what can that look like? And we know this time of year at school, think about all the things that we do in addition to classroom instruction. We have field days, we have award ceremonies, we have band and chorus performances, and maybe a spring play. We have all these other things going on to keep momentum in those last weeks. For a lot of our older kids, unfortunately, they've missed out on some of those motivators like prom and walking at graduation. And we've seen a lot of really great examples of how schools are trying to celebrate students, continue to motivate them, even though those traditional ceremonies and opportunities aren't there. So as a coach, you talked about check-ins, thinking about the questions that we're asking. Our folks, and this can easily be modified for your purposes and used by teachers to talk to students. So as you can see, you know, early on we were saying, how are the first few days or weeks working? Well, how are you doing in week 8? It may be very different. You got to keep asking these questions. Do you have a routine yet? Believe it or not, a lot of our teachers don't. They're still in survival mode and they are purely exhausted from it. So really, at this point, if they haven't got one, maybe we sit down and we craft one with them. When I say sit down, I guess virtually sit down. And then, you know, what does it look like for them? And what are they missing right now about the school year? And I know a lot of teachers are saying they really miss their kids and they never thought that they weren't going to be able to say goodbye to them way back in March, you know, physically face to face. So really thinking about what their needs are professionally and personally. And you guys are asking those questions, but have you turned it around and really given that opportunity, you know, telling teachers they should continue to ask these questions of their students and their families too. It's going to really increase that motivation. And then likewise, we know rubrics, right? Rubrics. There's lots of different rubrics, but right now in a remote learning situation, we're seeing that single point rubrics are really making it happen. How many of you out there are familiar with the single point rubric, right? I know I'm talking to the group who knows about it, but we've been really surprised how few educators are really have had experiences with single point rubrics or exposure to single point rubrics. They were only developed, I believe, in the year 2000, so it's still relatively new. I guess 20 years old, but in the grand scheme of education, relatively new. And they can be really helpful in order to outline the expectations and really focus on what's working and what's not. So some examples, we've really been encouraging teachers to use these, but also as a coach, it's just so easy to put down, you know, here's the things that we talked about that you're going to work on. How are you doing? Where are we growing? And what can we celebrate that is awesome that's growing, right? So using the terminology from the elementary classroom, but you know, it applies to all ages. So you can see, I've added into the chat a template, you know, that it's the green one on the left, but then, you know, for our teachers, they can plug in some concrete standards and things that are really, this helps outline it not only for the student of what they should be focusing on, again, keeping that focus laser and simplified. But then we've also found that this has been, we've gotten really good feedback from parents saying that this is helping them understand what the teacher's expectation for the students are in order to move forward. So it's something, if you haven't shared with teachers or you have shared it, it's a great opportunity to remind them. And this can be for academics, this can be for professional development, but it also can be used for something kind of fun to motivate students and continue them getting excited. They can write these, maybe create a single point rubric for their teacher about what they want their last few weeks of school to look like. It could be an interesting opportunity. So there's many ways it can be leveraged, and we really want to think about, you know, how can we make the most of this time. And of course, you are your teacher's champion. Your positive feedback and conversation may be the best feedback they get all day. That motivation is undeniable. So when you think of maybe teachers aren't reaching out to you, but you notice maybe in your analytics, right, on the SMORE, they're checking in and they're reading it. They really do need you and they need that connection and support. So when it comes to feedback, when it comes to keeping those connections going, feel free to share what's working for you as a coach, as an educator, with colleagues, with students, with parents. You know, what's working when you think about, you know, feedback and communicating back and forth during a physical distancing. feel free. You can, I know I got some people adding into the chat. If you want to open your mic, you're welcome to as well. We've gotten a lot of feedback. We've seen a lot of great. I had a celebratory drive by the house of all of the graduating seniors that live in my neighborhood over the weekend, beeping the horns and sharing signs, and that was nice to see. We're seeing that a lot on social media, photos of people, putting signs up in yards. It's a motivator. We've seen teachers being celebrated with signs in their yard by their leadership, by their coaches. We've also been encouraging, like, how are teachers celebrating you? How are they making sure that you're getting that positive feedback as well? So I'm hoping that you are hearing some of that and getting some of that, because you definitely deserve it. All right, and for 5,000 points, this is my second to number one tip. The importance of this educational mainstay has proven itself to be a current must-have and should remain a must-have. So what I'm saying is, this is something that's come up that we're currently using a lot, and we know that we want to keep this as we are moving forward, even if who knows what the fall will bring. I have some people guessing. Flexibility, super important. How we assess, very important. That has taken a shift, but we are seeing more than ever application of social emotional learning, which has always been a layer and level to our curriculum and instruction, and what we do to support students, what we do to support staff. We're really seeing the need for it right now in a huge way, because we are in an emergency crisis mode. This is very different from, typical online learning and teaching. And just some reminders of things that we've talked about in past FI Connects, that building trust is super important. And this was the ruler method. You can see the acronym. Recognizing emotions in self and others, understanding the causes and consequences of those emotions, labeling emotions accurately, expressing those emotions appropriately, and regulating emotions effectively. As a coach, I could see definitely using this model in my conversations with teachers. And then it's a model for them to take back and use with their students as well. In our session on motivators, we were aligning those to SEL. This is the CASTLE framework and structure. And we're seeing this shared a lot. We're seeing, a lot of conversation about SEL. It's not new. It's just so important right now, and it's really applicable. So as a coach, I'm sharing this with teachers. I'm using this framework to think about how lessons can be supported, but then also I'm using this to help me connect with teachers. All right, and our last one, my top one. What is the most important focus of all educators right now and always? This may be tough. I'm hoping you're going to see it and you're going to get it, right? Is it A, paperwork, B, grades, or C, self-care? And I see that you guys have caught on. It is self-care. One of the things that we are hyper-focused on right now is self-care. But I've been really surprised in feedback that I've been getting from coaches and classroom teachers alike, that very rarely are people asking them how they're doing. I found that really fascinating. We would just kind of pause and say, how are you doing? How are you really doing? And let's talk about that. And our feedback said that they were really surprised and thankful for that opportunity. And it shocked us, because we thought, that was happening more often. And we've really been sharing this graphic. I'm sure, like, if you're a regular, you've seen this before, right? Thinking about what really matters and what's within our control. A lot of stressors that we're hearing from the field are things that are out of your control right now. So thinking about what's in control, and then that is ultimately what the focus should be on. And let's see, Christine in the chat says, instead of how are you doing? Ask, what are you doing to take care of yourself? I love that. That's so true, right? So how are you doing? They're going to say fine. They're going to say good, or, whatever that response is. But if you ask them what they're doing, you're going to get a much stronger answer. Yes, instead of that refined response that people just automatically, impulsively say, right? One of the things early on that we shared was the +1 rule. When you're thinking about what you want to do and how you want to do it to take care of yourself and your needs and the things that you're planning on. When you sit down and think about, what am I going to do this week? What is thinking about that +1 rule? What's something I can do in the next 2 days to be able to meet that need? So, but what can I do this week? And then +1, what can I do in the next 2 days to be able to make that happen? And that's just like great coaching 101, right? To keeping it simple, keeping it focused, but then making it manageable and what's most important for you, for the learner, etc. And then we know too, I've seen a lot of coaches doing some really interesting things when it comes to motivating self-care, such as sleep challenges for staff and getting them to keep a sleep log. And there's like gift cards attached to that as an incentive, or healthy eating challenges, or sharing healthy recipes with colleagues. Also opportunities where getting folks to walk or to move, taking those brain breaks every 20 minutes and such. So we know it's really important. It's going to help our mental care, our self-care, those social connections. So I'm curious, when, as a coach, how are you making this work? Please feel free to share. How are you supporting that self-care for yourself and or for your staff? So if you're like me, and I will confess, I'm doing a terrible job of self-care. I've been talking about it a lot, but I need to take my own medicine, right? So starting meetings with personal check-ins. That's a great opportunity just to see where people are at. That works for teachers, for students, for anyone, even ourselves, right? Before we start the day. And I'm going to drop in the PDF of all of these slides and information that I've shared with you thus far. Everything is linked with templates and further resources. So I'm going to go and I'm going to grab that, but feel free. I see more people kind of sharing in the chat. Love it. Let's see. So setting work limits, setting a timer for yourself. It's excellent. Getting outside, stretching, moving. Kim says she's most concerned about teachers who are also being homeschooling their own kids. And what great advice do you have for helping self-care for those teachers? That's a really great question. So what do you do for those, they're teaching and then they have to stop and they have to teach, their kids, and timers are fantastic. Setting a timer for themselves or for their kids to take those brain breaks, to take a stop, to sit down in the morning and say, here's our agenda for today. Here's when I'm going to be teaching, and here's what you can do during that time so the teachers don't get interrupted, right? Or here's when we're going to sit down, I'm going to focus on this, and this is your window to like go outside and play, or whatever that looks like. So creating that agenda for the week or for the day and what that might look like, but also creating a designated space for that teacher to teach, but then also that designated space, if it can be accomplished, a different space for when they're teaching those kids. So they're getting out of that same chair that they may be sitting in for so long, and getting a different view, things like that. Just a few ideas, but feel free in the chat if you've got some additional strategies or ideas for Kim. And I'm like, Kathy, so true. Sometimes they just need the person to vent to, right? So having those Google Meetups where it's just like, okay, let's get it out, vent, and then put a timer on that though, right? And say, okay, we've gotten it out, but now that we've spent that time doing that, maybe we can think of let's think about things that can make it better, right? So like I said, I'm going to put the slides to the PDF, everything that is here. I'm I want to give us an opportunity to kind of talk and share more if possible. But then likewise, I want to take the opportunity and think about what are we doing to reflect during this time. We've been encouraging teachers to reflect on what they've done, where they're going with it, but then thinking too, as a coach, how are we reflecting on best practices, things that are working? Where are we collecting those? And are we sharing them with our staff, maybe written, maybe from the computer? We have some coaches that are starting podcasts in North Carolina to support this, making movies and putting them online. So or they can go, larger scale when they're sharing with them with large groups of people in the world. But the goal is, first, you want to start reflecting personally. What's working for you? What isn't? And how do you share that moving forward? So some things to remember is you're encouraging, as I encourage you to reflect on all those tasks, but then also really ask your teachers to concretely reflect and take even 2 minutes. 2 minutes doesn't seem like a long time, right? But 2 minutes to sit down and just reflect on what's working and what isn't. So the idea is, first, focus on what is working and what you feel may be lacking. Don't become addicted to fixing things. It's not about fixing anything, right? Nothing needs to be fixed. Everybody's doing a great job. But in that, we can identify our own strengths and use them to bolster where we feel we want to grow. We also need to be really honest with ourselves. So there's so many potentially great teachers out there that are blind to their shortcomings, as well as their awesomeness. That may apply to you too. You're awesome, and you may not take the moment to stop and really think about it. And no teacher's perfect, no coach is perfect, but reflection can really help us identify barriers and goals, right? It really is going to require us to be honest with ourselves and not to rationalize our own thoughts of mediocrity or to fear tearing ourselves apart. It's not the point, right? We want to reflect, iterate, and improve. And then lastly, we want to surround ourselves with enthusiasm. The more potential you see around you, the more you're going to observe and analyze and design to try to fit those ideas that you have. And we want to start small. We want to consider what's important and what matters to decide what to focus on. And for yourself as coaches, you have supported teachers in redesigning 200 plus years of education in a few weeks' time. So it's not perfect. We didn't sign up for it. We rose to the occasion and we went above and beyond. So that's a lot to take in. It's a lot to reflect on. And when I talk to teachers about reflecting on their practice or coaches reflecting on their practice, I also say, hey, we've got a break coming up and we need it. So don't spend the whole summer trying to come up with, the next thing, but take the opportunity and take some time to capture those thoughts now while they're resonating, while they're there, while they're present, and then come back to them when the time comes. So any thoughts, questions, comments on any of that? I know lots of stuff. I've dropped the PDF of the slides into our chat. Everything is linked. Graphics are linked. It's going to say on the slides what's linked and what's not. Articles shared in the chat will also be linked as well. Oh, I see Amanda shared in the chat a website called donothingfor2minutes.com. The opportunity to stop and reflect. Oh, go back one slide, please. No problem. I can do that. Also, if you want to grab the PDF of the slides, you'll have everything right there, Paul. Also, Kathy's put out there, if anyone's working on remote learning plans, they want to collaborate. She's dropped her email address. You can scroll up in the chat, grab that. Don't forget, you can also save your chat by clicking on the 3 dots in the chat window. So any questions, any comments, feel free to add to chat or you can open the mic. Kathy's also shared a sample of a newsletter ideas with a s'more. So you could check that out as well. All right, so like I said, as we're kind of wrapping up and winding down, if you want to save a transcript of the ideas and links that have been shared in the chat, you could do so by clicking on those 3 dots in your chat window in the field where you type, and it will give you the ability to save a transcript of the chat. You can also give me some feedback. We are continuing to do FI Connects sessions. We want to continue to give you some quality work, so we're going to continue to do some research. But that means our next session is not going to be next week. It is going to be on the 2nd. So I've gone ahead and I've linked, there's a short bit.ly and a longer link for a feedback survey. You give me some feedback of what's working, what's helping, what more do you want, and where do you think you want to see FI Connects going? Because the goal that I have for this project is that it's going to continue through the summer, into the fall, and continue to be supports not only for remote learning needs, but as a opportunity for educators to connect, come together, and share best practices and ideas. So please let me know what this could look like for you. These discussions will continue, but as the needs change, we are going to move with the needs. And we see Christine has also shared some human emotion compounds linked to our chat in order to share some additional awesome resources. So like I said, next time on June 2nd, so we're gonna have a little bit of a break for you to take a breather, for you to pull some things together and just digest, I'm sure, all the things that you've been experiencing and learning over the next few weeks. You can see in the next coaching session. But we also have some school educator sessions coming up, maintaining momentum for students and self, that is voices from the field sessions. And then June, reflecting and learning. But then our next session on June 2nd is going to feature the awesome Tierney Fairchild, who's in our chat today. And she's going to be sharing some ideas with us in a Voices from the Field session. I see you there, Cherry. Woohoo! Yeah, I can't wait either. It's going to be awesome. So we've started working towards that. If you want to go back in a deeper dive of anything that was talked about or shared, you're going to find a link to our YouTube playlist. You can see that bit.ly right there. I've dropped the feedback. Oops, sorry. To get the feedback link for you. And if you're not if successful, let me know with that. This FI Connects playlist, I've gone back and I've added titles to all of the sessions. So that was a request. So you can navigate that playlist and find some additional helpful resources, links, tools, and ideas. In the comments section of those videos are the links to the PDF slides. You can access those. So all FI Connects information is there on that playlist. And here's all the links, all the stuff. I'm going to drop them into the chat as well. Thank you guys for everything that you're doing. Please don't feel overwhelmed. Please continue to do the awesome things, to share with one another. But, you know, we're in this together. We're here to help you. And of course, please, in that feedback form, let me know how I can continue to support you as we move forward. So thank you all so much.